Welcome into LTSN's Game of the Week. I'm Jason Ross Jr. I'll be joined shortly by Sarah Davis on the sidelines. Lawrence Tech women's soccer is finally back. Their last game was on October 31st. It is now February 12th. However, we're back in action and we can be more excited. The word around this place is excitement as Lawrence Tech went 4-0-1 through that first portion of the season. They'll take on a Trinity Christian team with high aspirations as well. And for more on that wonderful start to the year, we send it down to the sidelines for Sarah Davis.
Hey everybody, Sarah Davis here. It's officially been 104 days, as Jason mentioned, since the girls have been in action. We spoke to the senior Laura Silverman before today's game, and she said that the common theme that they're playing with is play every single game like it's your last, because you never know when it may be. In this world that we live in, there's COVID regulations, there's season-ending injuries, and it's just so important to execute the time that we have out on the court. Over to you, Jason.
Thanks so much, Sarah. You know, assistant coach Doug Steinert, who you see on your screen there with the squad, sent out a video to his team earlier this morning and told them, hey, you haven't played in 104 days. And they know that, so you wonder what the early stages will be like.
Just right next to me.
And in just a sec here, we'll chat with head coach Andy Richards to find out what his expectations are. And now we do go to the sidelines with Sarah and Andy.
Hey, Coach, so we just talked about it's been 104 days since your guys' last game. What are you hoping to see from the team tonight?
We just talked about it before the game, trying to pick up where we left off. We know it's been a long time, but we've always had that in our mind. We always knew this was coming, so it's not like it's a surprise, you know. Just try and find our feet as fast as we possibly can, try and pick up where we left off and find some rhythm. We got this game and next Friday's game, and then we start conference again, so it's a great opportunity for us all.
And what words of encouragement did you give the girls before today's game?
Well, as usual, Coach Doug, and I have to give him a shout out, otherwise he gets upset. He sent a motivational video out this morning, hopefully try and get everyone fired up. Just, you know, again, about taking opportunities and working hard and making sure we're up for the battle.
All right, thanks, Coach. Good luck.
Thanks very much.
Back to you, Jason.
Coach. Thanks, Coach. Thanks, Sarah. Awesome job as usual. Well, Lawrence Tech again went 4-0-1 through that first portion of the season. Best record in the WAC conference so far. 104 days since their last game, and now they are ready to get back on the field to take on a Trinity Christian team who we mentioned also has high aspirations under their head coach Josh Lenars. That group off to a 1-1 start in the Chicagoland Collegiate Athletic Conference. They didn't play through the fall portion of the season, so they just got things underway last Friday and then last Saturday as well with a back-to-back. Kicked off their season with a victory over Thomas More in Kentucky. Then the following day, we're on the opposite end of the shutout with a 2-0 loss. Look at a Lawrence Tech group that has a wonderful blend of experience. 8 freshmen, 3 sophomores, 4 juniors, and 7 seniors leading the way on that side. Now, one thing we will keep you noted on is that Jenny Deere, their freshman forward, out of the lineup today on the Lawrence Tech side. She received her second vaccination earlier today. A look at Laura Silverman. Plenty of energy will be radiating off Laura as usual today. She is one of the leaders of that squad in the midfield. And Deanna Hill, the sophomore forward from the Ann Arbor area, ready to go as well as the two sides line up for what should be a fun one today. Certainly won't be easy on either side. The excitement, the energy, who's maybe a little over-anxious as we roll into the first few minutes of action. Prior to that, we'll get the lineups and anthem ready to go for you. Again, we're here at the Wixom Total Sports Complex. Lawrence Tech playing 2 neutral site games this month before returning home to Blue Devil Stadium in the beginning of March. The average temperature around these parts has been about 20 degrees over the past week or so. My good friend and our sideline reporter Sarah Davis is heading down to Florida tomorrow to avoid this weather, but in the meantime, we're avoiding it here in Michigan by staying indoors. So certainly the better option. We asked the players, is this going to affect you or whatnot? They said, no, we're just excited to get out there and play. So that's been the common theme throughout the past couple of weeks. They've been practicing indoors, have the Blue Devils in Farmington, Michigan.
Jason, to add on to that, something that's really interesting is when your season gets delayed, it's very easy to get unmotivated and to just get comfortable, and none of these girls did. They were ready right as they basically scheduled this game. They were all fired up and ready to go, and with anybody that we've spoken to, they've mentioned nothing but positive things about being here today.
Positivity is the name of the game so far as you get a look at the starters on the LTU side. Deanna Hill rounding out that starting 11. And this 4-0-1 start, the best for Lawrence Tech since 2018 when they began the season 4-1. However, this year they're hoping it's different because after that 4-1 start in 2017, they went on to either tie or lose 7 of their next 8 games. Well, that was 2 years ago. This is a different roster. It's a different makeup. It's a different season and hopefully a different story on the Blue Devils side of things. And for Trinity Christian, they're in the midst of one of their best stretches in program history, especially in recent history. 16-3-1 last season. The vast majority of that talent has returned, including leading goal scorer Celia Hopkins. 21-2-2 in 2018, 19-3 in 2017 for the Trolls of Trinity Christian, who play down in Palos Heights, Illinois. Their head coach Josh Lenar is equally as amped for his group to get back at it today. One more look at the LTU coaching staff. Doug Steiner, the assistant, and the grad assistant Sydney Everett as well. Mark Whitcomb, the goalkeeper coach for Lawrence Tech. Rebecca Almendoz in goal today for the Blue Devils. And off we go. The first touch in 104 days on the Lawrence Tech side of things. Should be a fun one. Pleasure to have you with us as usual here on LTSN.
Something that the coach shared with us before the game is they do have a few of their key players out. But he said there's 3 girls coming in from the bench, and by the looks of everything, I would not be able to pick out who those players are. Everybody's extremely confident and extremely prepared to be out there.
Yeah, and beg your pardon, it's Renee Anderson starting at goal for Lawrence Tech, which isn't typically what you see in the beginning of a game, especially in the early stages of, I should say, it's interesting, Sarah, early stages of the season, but early stages of the second season. Rebecca Almendoz had started the previous 5 games for LTU, won a couple of WAC Defensive Player of the Weeks, had 2 clean sheets. But today it is Renee Anderson, the junior from Snoqualmie, Washington, who really stepped up in the offseason, according to head coach Andy Richards, and split time with Rebecca last season. Rebecca certainly is the number 1 goalkeeper in that role as a senior. Sliding out on the side for Trinity Christian, Allie Krantz will get the start today. The senior making her 3rd start of the season out of Kalamazoo Christian High School out in West Michigan. Demi Skibetza, the freshman from Murrieta, California. Trinity Christian does a lot of recruiting out west. They have 14 combined players from either the state of Colorado or California on the roster this season. So in particular, those are 2 states they really like to tap into in addition to Arizona. Anna Lewis getting the start today for Lawrence Tech. Renee Anderson rolls out. Courtney Matheson, also a player getting the start today out of Markham, Ontario, on the Lawrence Tech back line. Lindsay Shootback in a bit of trouble there. Able to find it free over to Laura Silverman, the senior making her 40th career start today in a Blue Devil uniform. I asked her about that earlier this morning, and Laura said it certainly is gratifying from an individual perspective, just shows the amount of hard work that she's put in. But towards the end of her answer, also kind of reverted it back to her teammates. And that's the kind of player that she is, so selfless on and off the field. We were excited to watch her today, as usual. This is a Trinity Christian team that, as we said, you can't take lightly.
It's a lot of back and forth. Ball's not really making it past the middle part of the field, which is good on both ends. Both teams playing really strong defense.
Something else Laura said this morning is that one of their, I guess I should say, what is a part of the forefront of the Lawrence Tech mentality is possession. That's something they've worked on a lot in practice over the past couple of weeks, is trying to improve that. There's a look at Deanna Hill, who's attempting to engineer something in the attacking third, but lost it. Hill is an interesting player, 1 goal so far this season. She had 4 goals through her first 7 games as a freshman, really announced herself early on as a force to be reckoned with. Teams have marked her a bit heavier this season so far in the early stages. Laura Silverman makes a beautiful defensive play there. And now LTU on the counterattack, thanks in part to the senior, I should say thanks in full part to the senior. A transfer originally from U of D Mercy a couple of years ago. She has fit in more than well in an LTU uniform. Brianna Ull, who had 9 goals a season ago for Trinity Christian, lofts it down the field for their leading goal scorer. Celia Hopkins, who led the Chicagoland Collegiate Athletic Conference a season ago with 18 goals, puts one on net there, but an easy stop for Renee Anderson, who then subsequently clears it back to the midfield. But number 44 in the Navy uniform today is one to watch. They'll be looking to get her involved pretty often as the flag goes up there.
Something that I think is interesting, Jason, is we get here and by the looks of it, it seems that everything's just smooth sailing and it's just simple. But the truth is these athletes, they go through 3 COVID tests a week just to be able to play. And it's really not as simple as a process as we may think.
That's so true. Trying to keep everything safe this year is certainly a process. We're so grateful to have everything back. It was interesting, Sarah. You and I spoke to Lawrence Tech head coach Andy Richards prior to the game, and he was very happy because his wife actually got her second vaccination yesterday, and his mom in England received her first this morning of the dose. So congrats to Andy and his family. Always wonderful to catch up with him. Certainly one of my favorite people in the sports world to chat with. And he was amped up to get his team back out onto the field. He noted that these are 2 tough non-conference games that they're playing here, kicking things off with Trinity Christian. Before they get set to play when conference play does resume, UNOH, Northwestern Ohio, if you aren't familiar with the WAC conference, they are one of the more prominent teams year in and year out in the WAC, certainly a perennial powerhouse. As you get a look at Lauren Wozniak there, who also makes the start, the junior from Walled Lake, who's been one of the more prominent goal scorers in the WAC conference during her tenure. Dalia Jarosik there in tight quarters with Caitlin Bergsma. A couple of players from West Michigan. Bergsma is from Kentwood, which is near Grand Rapids. And Dalia on the opposite side from Grand Haven. A beautiful city out in West Michigan. And Dalia was recruited by one of Lawrence Tech's rivals, Cornerstone, which is located obviously out in West Michigan along with Aquinas. They are glad that they were able to snag Dalia from the West Michigan rivals. Lawrence Tech actually ended their 2019 campaign by losing to Aquinas in the WAC semifinals. The goal this year for Lawrence Tech is nothing short of winning a WAC conference title, both regular season and tournament. And right now, despite being picked 6th in the preseason poll that we talked about, they sit atop the WAC to the surprise of most, but certainly not to the surprise of these players. Talia Jarosik plays it to her good friend Deanna Hill, who is always so strong on the ball. Went down there, though, and that breeds a counterattacking opportunity for the Trolls. Alexis Barnes back on it, the senior from Middleville, Michigan, in a big spot at center back this year after Maddie Greenlee, another senior center back, went down with a torn ACL in training prior to the start of the season. That certainly expanded the role for Alexis Barnes, who played it over to Madison Bologna there. She's also in a new role this season as a fullback. Was more of a midfielder a season ago. She's now a junior as well and stocked up with experience. Again, the Blue Devils off to a 4-0-1 start this season. Trinity Christian comes in at 1-1, having just started their season a week ago. For LTU, it was 104 days since their last game, if you're just joining us. That one is played out of the reach of Celia Hopkins, the leading goal scorer for Trinity Christian, who had 18 tallies a season ago to not only lead this Trolls squad, but lead the Chicagoland Collegiate Conference. Renee Anderson will take the duties of clearing it to the midfield. Rebecca Holbrook and into the Trinity Christian half of the field. Holbrook, another transfer from Schoolcraft, came in last season. One of the few naturally left-footed players on the LTU roster, as you see over there on that left-hand side. She's in a very athletic friend group, Holbrook. She's actually roommates with a few volleyball players that just got their season underway a few days ago, or I should say resumed their season. Shelby Rash, Alicia Vipushin, and Renali Callison. A wonderful group of people. Rebecca, the lone soccer player amidst that group, as the ball is cleared back towards the goalkeeper for Trinity Christian. Starting today is Allie Krantz, once again the senior from Portage, Michigan. The vast majority of this LTU team returned this season. Anna Lewis is a newcomer from Scotland, plays it back to Bologna, who lofts it towards the area. Hill was in the vicinity, but Krantz comes out to save the day. Lawrence Tech has had some strong starts so far this season. That's certainly aided the 4-0-1 beginning. The last two games prior to the pause, LTU scored 8 goals combined as Anderson is tested, but able to cover that up after the shot there from Celia McKinney. And it was 6 goals versus Rochester, 2 more against Concordia in those final 2 games of October. They have plenty of talents up front in the midfield and on the back end this year to the Blue Devils. On the Trinity Christian side, the vast majority of their team is returning as well from last year's 16-3-1 campaign. There's Celia Hopkins, the curving left-footed boot, scoots wide. Again, Hopkins, just such an incredibly talented player, one that LTU will be marking heavily on that back four today. Hopkins, an NAIA All-American honorable mention a season ago.
Something that the head coach, Andy Richards, also mentioned to us before the game was A big thing that he emphasizes on as a coach is just to focus on the details, on the small things. And sometimes people get so caught up in the big picture, but if you can control the small things and really execute those, that is when you'll be successful.
That's what he's preached ever since arriving, is not only taking it day by day, but taking it almost sequence by sequence, is kind of what he worded to us in our pregame interview today with Andy. Been around since the 2016-17 season, along with his assistant coach, Doug Steinert. Something Andy said when he first arrived in that 16-17 season is, he said, I'm very excited to build the program at LTU into something special, something that everyone can connect with and be proud of. And now they're to a point where they're certainly proud of it, and the fan base is connecting with them. You could argue that the standards have raised year by year as well, as that shot goes wide. Something we touched on with him, I'd say back in October now, was that in his first season, and to provide some context to what I'm about to say here, Lawrence Tech began the season 1-0 with a win over Indiana Tech. It was a 1-0 victory over the Warriors to kick off the WAC conference season this year. And Andy told me a story about he and Doug that in their first season together, they beat Indiana Tech by that same score of 1-0. And they were very happy about that. It was something that you could celebrate. But this year, they beat Indiana Tech 1-0, and they weren't happy with it. It just didn't reach the standards that they wanted to have this season from an all-around performance standpoint. But that kind of goes to show the evolution of this program over the past few years. He did say what's left is knocking off the big names. Uno, who we mentioned they have when WAC conference does resume here. Madonna, programs they haven't beaten yet. That's certainly on the to-do list for this year. And for Josh Lenars on the Trinity Christian side, they are building something special as well. We mentioned 3 consecutive seasons with at least 16 wins. That'll be very challenging this year given that they already have a loss and there are only 17 games in this shortened season. But we definitely put an asterisk next to this unusual 2021 campaign here. Maddie Bologna delivers it in there, promptly intercepted by Demi Scabetta. She'll play it ahead to Hopkins. Lovely flick back in the two-person combination between Scabetta and Hopkins. And Scabetta's shot simmers wide left of the net of Renee Anderson. Under half an hour to go now in this opening half of play. Neither side with much consistent pressure being applied in the attacking third so far. Get a whistle blown there. It appeared as though Lauren Wozniak went down on that sequence. Laura Silverman will take the duties of getting us back underway. The senior from Rochester, computer engineering major. As we mentioned, one of the most energetic people that you'll ever chat with. She is a vocal leader on this Lawrence Tech group and told us earlier that you're certainly playing your hardest right now because you never know when it's going to be your last game. A lovely play, speaking of working hard there. Courtney Matheson gets back. She started 13 games as a freshman, gets a start today here now in her sophomore year out of Bill Crothers Secondary School in Ontario, Canada. And they'll need her to step up this season in a similar role to Alexis Barnes, with Maddie Greenlee having gone down with that injury. The corner kick comes in, first set piece of the afternoon on the Trinity Christian side. Momentary danger, but LSU gets out of it unscathed. Bologna tried to connect with Anna Lewis. Silverman ultimately plays it out to the midfield where Jessie Koji resides. Koji is a player we haven't touched on too much yet in the broadcast. She is a sparkling freshman from Macomb, Michigan, who had 4 goals in her final 2 games of that fall portion of the season. Really jumped on the scene quickly, in addition to Jenny Deere, who is, again, out of the lineup today, which certainly takes away from that, what would have been a dynamic front 3. It's still a dynamic front 3 for LTU, but she brings a presence and an instinct and just a soccer IQ that is so lethal. It's almost as if she knows what's going to happen next before it does happen. So the Blue Devils are certainly missing Jenny Deere today, who was leading the team in goals entering this second portion of the year. Jessie Koji second in that category with 4. Deere had 5. So those two combined for just 9 goals through those first 5 games between 2 freshmen. Certainly something that you didn't expect, but you love to see if you're on the LTU side. So a bright, bright future ahead for this program. Andy Richards certainly has to be happy. Deanna Hill is a part of that. She's just a sophomore from Ann Arbor. Has a goal this season. The underclassmen on LTU actually have 11 of the first 13 total team goals for the Blue Devils this year, which is an outstanding stat. And it'll certainly just keep growing as things develop here. Deanna Hill will throw it in from the corner there. Anna Lewis couldn't quite track it down, and a clearance from Trinity Christian. Both teams have been good defensively in the early stages of this season. Again, Trinity Christian won 1-0 to kick off their season against Thomas More. Then we're on the opposite end of that script in their second game against Georgetown down in Kentucky, losing 2-0. And maybe potentially see some substitutions coming in on the Lawrence Tech side rather soon. LTU with some players warming up in front of us. Again, Andy Richards mentioned 3 players in the starting lineup today that you wouldn't normally see due to a few names being out. Jessie Koji trying to get her legs back under her. Rebecca Holbrook lofts it down the left-hand side, but just out of play. Brianna Ull slips it down the right-hand side. Intentions there for Easton Armstrong, who has a sister on the team, a younger sister, who's a midfielder, Maddie. Both of those players from Fontana, California. We mentioned Trinity Christian tends to do a lot of recruiting out west. Here's Bologna, who has adapted so well to that outside fullback role. The Blue Devils trying to get their passing down there, which is something they worked on in practice this week. Couldn't quite connect. Matheson, wonderful play. Lofts it back towards the midfield area. Settling it down on Trinity Christian's back line there is Caitlin Bergsma. On that occasion, Brianna Ull dwelled a bit too long on the ball. It's one of the interesting, relatively new stats in soccer is dwell time. How much time are you staying on the ball before passing it to the next teammate? You can see the Blue Devils giving those quick 1-2 touches from foot to foot, which tends to be more efficient. However, when you have a player like the one that's tracking the ball down right now, and Celia Hopkins, you don't mind her dwelling on the ball for too long. 18 goals a season to go, and a lovely move there. Bladed towards the goal mouth, and the first goal of the afternoon. Celia Hopkins will get the assist. On the end of the goal there is Drew McCarthy out of Sun City, California. And the Trolls break the scoring seal. It's 1-0 in favor of Trinity Christian. Played right towards the area by Celia Hopkins. And the finish from Drew McCarthy. A beautiful progression there, though, from Hopkins to get past the initial defender and give her team a 1-0 lead, playing it to McCarthy, who finishes things off. That's the first goal of the season for Drew McCarthy. Hopkins yet to score this season, but as usual, in the mix when the Trolls do score. So now the Blue Devils trying to answer back. Again, we mentioned that experience they have, 7 seniors, so they've been down a goal before. Not a new scenario for them. We knew this would be a tough matchup entering today. If you're just joining us, Jason Ross Jr. alongside Sarah Davis today. The Blue Devils playing a couple of neutral site games this February before returning to Blue Devil Stadium in March. The average temperature around these parts has hovered around 20 degrees over the past week or so. Obviously, this is the more desirable option. We certainly aren't complaining, being indoors here, very comfy atmosphere. Although an interesting one, right behind us, there's actually a baseball practice going on. Lawrence Tech baseball preparing for their season here at the Total Sports Complex in Wixom. The Blue Devils have been practicing at an indoor facility in Farmington, Michigan, on the women's soccer side. There's Maddie Bologna, a player who just loves the game, on to Laura Silverman. You'd certainly say the same thing about her. Long delivery up to Deanna Hill, propelled back towards the midfield by Claire Darby. There's Brianna so strong in the ball to Caitlin Bergsma, who has 1 goal so far this season, lofted it towards the net of Renee Anderson, who gets the start today. Rebecca Almendoz is who we thought would be the starting goalkeeper for Lawrence Tech, the senior from Trinidad and Tobago, who had 17 starts last season and had started all 6 games prior to this now second portion of the 2021 campaign. But she's out today. Andy Richards told us there would be a few players not in the mix today. It seems as though Almendoz might be one of those, along with the Blue Devils' leading goal scorer, Jenny Deere, who had 5 goals in the first 6 games of the season. She's a no-go today for a positive reason, though. Received her second vaccination earlier today, so that was a neat fact to learn prior to today's game. Wonderful 2-person combination there between Hopkins and Bergsma. Up ahead now to Brianna Ohl. Promptly turned back by Courtney Matheson, but Hopkins isn't quite done yet. Alexis Barnes plays it back towards the midfield. My apologies, that was Dahlia Jarosik, the Grand Haven, Michigan native. So versatile, can play on the back line or up front or in the midfield. Kind of an attacking midfielder is what you could label her as. But a very good defensively. Oftentimes you see her roaming up both ends of the field and not losing much energy because she plays a lot. Silverman goes down, gets up hobbling a bit. Oftentimes she'll end games with 1 or 2 nicks or bruises because she is always in the midst of the action and needs a second here to maybe get her shoe fixed up. Some assistance from Dahlia Jarosik. Now we're back underway. Courtney Matheson will take the free kick. Here's Jessie Koji. We mentioned she had 4 goals through the first 6 games. All 4 came in her last 2 games. Earned her a WAC Offensive Player of the Week, the first of her career. She and her fellow freshman, Jenny Deere, actually had the final 2 WAC Offensive Player of the Week awards through those last 2 weeks of the season in October and November. Under 20 minutes to go now in this opening half of play. Over there tracking the ball down prior to Renee Anderson taking it here was Kayla Ellis, another player who we didn't really expect to see in the starting lineup. Central defender, another freshman from Lansing, Michigan, out of Lansing Christian. And LTU is one of the best architecture programs in the country, and that kind of swayed at Ellis as well. She's an architecture major. Got off to a bit of a slow start in camp prior to the season, but Andy Richards said that, coming back, everyone was kind of trying to get in the swing of things, and now she is, and really starting to get her footing. Renee Anderson, architectural engineering major, as fit as anyone on the team, in the words of Andy Richards prior to the season. And she's learned a lot from Rebecca Almendoz, as those two have split time over the past few years now in goal for the Blue Devils. Ellis will just loft that out of play. Trinity Christian trying to engineer something in the attacking third once again. Celia Hopkins always in the midst of that, along with Ohl. There is Brianna Ohl, who's able to win that ball in a gorgeous fashion. First goal, if you're just joining us, was assisted by Celia Hopkins, scored by Drew McCarthy. Those two have a great chemistry with one another. That's the difference right now between the Trolls and the Blue Devils. Jarosik settle things down and navigate out of trouble. But a wonderful defensive play just over her back shoulder. I don't think she saw Hopkins. And now Trinity Christian is right back on the attack. Koji, watched carefully by Autumn Bergman, the defender from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, who also has an excellent IQ on that Trinity Christian back line. Minoring in psychology while majoring in speech-language pathology. Plenty of high IQs on both sides. Ohl trying to track that down. Anderson had a bit of a dangerous scenario there. Ball clipped off her hands. Luckily, she had Bologna tracking back towards it, and it appears as though it last touched Ohl. So the Blue Devils will take possession here with 15:03 to play in this opening 45. Lauren Steck off to the 4-0-1 start so far this season, and they have played in some close ones. We mentioned that last win was a 2-1 victory over Concordia back on October 31st. The lone, we said before the game, it was nearly a flawless record through those 6 games. Just the 4-0-1 start. The one tie was against Cornerstone at Blue Devil Stadium. That was a 1-1 game. Our first couple of wins against Corktown AFC and Indiana Tech were 1-0 victories. The Corktown AFC game was actually an exhibition, technically on the record. Indiana Tech was the first regular season game and first conference game that the Blue Devils won 1-0, but weren't satisfied with, as we mentioned earlier in the broadcast. On the opposite end of the field, Allie Krantz really hasn't faced much pressure so far in the Trinity Christian net. For the most part, over the past 8-9 minutes, we've kept our eyes on this half of the field. Trinity Christian has played a very clean game so far. They don't make many mistakes, and that's why they've been able to build up the culture that they have over the past few seasons. Again, 3 consecutive 16-win campaigns. 16-3-1 a season ago in the Chicagoland Collegiate Athletic Conference. And trying to replicate that this year. But coming off a 2-0 loss to a very good Georgetown team down in Kentucky are the Trolls. There's Brianna Ull once again. Always dangerous. 9 goals a season ago. She's been in the mix so far. Tests Almondo's, who has to make a sprawling save. You see Ull just individually picking her way through white shirts there. I mentioned Ull returns the second most goals from last season on the Trinity Christian side with those 9. Took 4 shots in the 2-0 loss to Georgetown. That did bring up a set piece, though. It's the second of the afternoon for Trinity Christian. Header comes in, promptly cleared by Deanna Hill. Good to hear the communication on the Lawrence Tech side. That's one thing without fans and being down here at field level. So you kind of experience that, how much communication really goes on in this game. Such a beautiful, anticipatory sport. Lawrence Tech's head coach Andy Richards grew up watching it. His beloved Aston Villa, now in the Premier League over the past couple of seasons. His dad used to take him to Villa Park as a youngster, and that's how he fell in love with the sport. And made his way over to the States as a coach, spent some time at Bowling Green and Oregon State. Now, we mentioned since the 2016-17 season, Richards has been in charge of the women's program here at Lawrence Tech. His goals are instilling that sense of hard work in the classroom and on the field, having a sense of respect throughout the group, and you can kind of feel the fire within him when you chat with him before games this season, because he knows how good this group could be. Short-handed today, though, without Jenny Deere in the lineup, as we mentioned. She's their leading goal scorer as that soars atop the crossbar. Renee Anderson, not typically the one to get the start. Rebecca Almondo's had started all 6 games prior to her this season. But Anderson is certainly one that they trust, and they feel she took a step up in the offseason. So now under 10 minutes to play in this opening half of action on LTSN. Dalia Jarosik, who had an excellent freshman year, she's now a sophomore, has scored this season. We talked about the fact that 11 of the 13 LTU goals have come off the feet of underclassmen this season. Maddie Bologna, she's now an upperclassman as a junior. Scored a couple of goals in her day as well. Up to Koji, who has 4 this season, the freshman. Lovely play. Lofts it towards the left side of the net there, but certainly not a test for Kratz, the senior goalkeeper on the Trinity Christian side, who posted a clean sheet in the opener this season against Thomas More on the Trinity Christian side. Allowed 2 goals last time out against Georgetown. Into the final 7 minutes now of this opening half of play. Laura Silverman possessing the ball for Lawrence Tech. She talked to us this morning about the importance of possession, but that's been such a tough challenge today because this Trinity Christian team is so steady defensively year in and year out, and the Blue Devils just have not sustained much pressure in the attacking third so far. Trying to get players like number 23, Deanna Hill, in the mix on that front three. Andrea Williams in the game now, the freshman. Number 24 in white for Lawrence Tech out of South Lyon. Another forward trying to find some sort of burst. Mirando Katenhoven plays it over to Mia Silas. Lost control. Bologna able to clear. Silverman, she'll typically play just about every minute of the game for Lawrence Tech. Brianna Ull getting set to make her way back in on the Trinity Christian side. And again, she had 9 goals a season ago, always in the midst of their offensive attack. Trying to get something brewing here. Cara Amidin, the attacking midfielder from California. Nothing doing there. Now things can breathe a little bit as Anderson has a chance to just slide it on over there to the left-hand side for Lewis. Wonderful heady instincts by Bologna, as usual, in that fullback role. Up ahead to Deanna Hill. Player who don't mind staying on the ball for longer than usual because she is so strong in possession. Koji ran out of bounds there by the tough defense. Wanted a call. It appears as though she might have deserved one there. That was a physical sequence. Again, the Blue Devils off to a 4-0-1 start this season. The best through 6 games in the WAC conference. Trinity Christian coming out of the Chicagoland Collegiate Athletic Conference. They're off to a 1-1 start. Their season just began last Friday, whereas on the Lawrence Tech side, they kicked things off with a fall portion of the schedule, having already played 6 games. I should say 5 games. And it's one of their best starts in recent memory, best since 2018 to be exact, when they did get off to a 4-1 start. However, that season, they either lost or tied each of the next 7 games. This year, it appears as though, obviously, a much different roster than what he had in 2018, but just a different vibe and a different feeling around this team, despite having lost key pieces early on in the season. They lost their starting center back and senior Maddie Greenlee to a torn ACL. Then shortly thereafter, Caitlin Mather, who was being marked very heavily and physically, took a tough collision in the early stages of the 2020 portion of the schedule, I should say, and went down with a torn ACL herself. So she'll be out for the remainder of the year. Was expected to be Lawrence Tech's leading goal scorer this year. However, the underclassmen have stepped up and really assumed those roles. They don't look phased. 11 of the 13 goals this season for Lawrence Tech have come from underclassmen. Caitlin Mather was spectacular a season ago. Either way, that's going to be a big hit as the season motors on. Mather had a team-leading 12 goals last season to go along with 6 assists and really found her groove from a position standpoint. She's so versatile, it was almost to her detriment in recent seasons because she had so many skills. They didn't really know where to put her. But then they found a spot, found what she wanted to do, And much of Lawrence Tech's style of play this season we expected to revolve around Mather, but that's out of the door now. It's on the feet of these newcomers, and today LTU in their first game in 104 days having to adapt already with key pieces out of the mix, including Jenny Deere, who was leading the team through those first 5 games with 5 goals. Was the reigning WAC Offensive Player of the Week. Almondo's, the goalkeeper, Rebecca Almondo's, isn't in today either. She had a couple of Defensive Player of the Weeks after posting 2 clean sheets. So the goalkeeping, the unexpected scoring, the steady play and leadership from seniors in the midfield, all combined for what was an excellent start for LTU in the fall. But now trying to sustain some pressure in the attacking third against this excellent defensive team in Trinity Christian with their back 4 today. This rolls out of play with just half a minute to go through the first 45 here at the Total Sports Complex in Wixom, Michigan. About 15 minutes away from the LTU campus in Southfield. Technically a neutral site game. LTU is 15-6-3 through home games over the last 3 seasons. But they won't play at Blue Devil Stadium until March, when it maybe warms up by a couple of degrees. It won't be too warm, but it'll be better than these 15-degree February days. 1-0 is the Trinity Christian lead so far through 45 here on LTSN. Welcome back into LTSN. Look at the Blue Devil squad trotting over to the corner where they'll have their halftime chat after trailing 1-0. The lone goal in that first half was assisted by Celia Hopkins, scored by Drew McCarthy. And sticking with us here at halftime, we'll go to Sarah Davis on the sidelines, who has more on this unusual restart to the season.
Soccer in February is definitely something that none of these players are used to. The Blue Devils started up practice on January 19th, which was non-contact. I spoke to the junior Lindsay Schubach before the game, and she shared with me that non-contact practice gave them the opportunity to practice things that they typically don't have enough time for during the regular season. Looking forward to see the improvements. Back to you, Jason.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, they talked about how high the energy was when they kicked things back off when it came to contact. Laura Silverman was telling us earlier today that, you know, when one player would go into the corner, another player would come in, and they would just feed from one player to the next. It was almost like a domino effect with the energy standpoint. Interesting development on the field right now. You saw prior to us going to replay there that Rebecca Almondo's might be warming up, so she could be in the mix today over there to make a second half appearance. Some highlights of Almondo's in the net. And, yeah, I mean, that could be an interesting development to this game if it does indeed happen. As you take a look at Almondo's, who made the first 6 starts of the season so far for Lawrence Tech prior to today. This was Anderson's first start. But LTU, with how things are going so far, it doesn't appear to have much leeway. So this could very well be a 1-goal game if it is decided has an overtime-like vibe to it. Well, you know, once again, just kind of resetting the stage for you. LTU off to a 4-0-1 start. Best record to kick off a season through those 5 games since 2018 when they began the season 4-1. But this obviously a different roster. Last year in 2019, they nearly doubled the goal total from that 2018 campaign, during which they really struggled offensively. And now you look at this campaign, trying to replicate that. They likely won't hit the 40-goal mark just because it's a shortened season. But finding a way to rediscover that right now will be paramount, as Andy Richards is chatting with his group there. And the goalkeepers continue to warm up. Seems as though we will have a switch on the Lawrence Tech side. On the flip end of that, Allie Kratz, the senior from Portage, Michigan, for this Trinity Christian team, just really hasn't been tested today. For the most part, we've kept our eyes on this left-hand side of the field, and that's been the storyline so far. Well, we'll be back here on LTSN in just a bit. Once again, Trinity College up 1-0 after 45 on your home for Blue Devil Athletics. Welcome back into LTSN. Final 45 here. Trinity Christian up 1-0 here at Total Sports Complex in Wixom, Michigan. As we mentioned during the halftime break, technically a neutral site game on the LTU side. The Blue Devils are 15-6-3. Last 3 seasons at Blue Devil Stadium. However, they won't be playing there until March because of the chilly temperatures, to say the least, outside. They're trying to warm things up in here offensively. In particular, Deanna Hill hoping to get Lawrence Tech off to an energetic start. She oftentimes does this and does it well. She can pick through defenders, so strong in the ball. Lofts it towards the edge of the 18-yard box. Settled there by Shootbach. Laura Silverman, who had 4 goals a season ago, the attacking midfielder, / defensive midfielder. Difficult to put a label on her because she's so versatile and pretty much everywhere all the time. She's ubiquitous, if you will, in the mix there, but cleared by Allie Krantz. In goal now for Lawrence Tech is Rebecca Almondoz, who warmed up at halftime. We wondered if she would be a go today. Renee Anderson made her first start for Lawrence Tech in goal. Physical play to begin things, and a whistle. Sarah, can you go to the stats and make sure that's Almondoz? It's the live stats. And an interesting setting here for both sides. Pretty much everyone is practicing indoors right now in the state of Michigan, so they're used to it. And our sideline reporter, Sarah Davis, asked a couple of players about that before the game started today, and they said it's more so just excitement to get back underway. You don't have much time to think against this Trinity Christian team when you're on your heels defensively. Here's Skabetza, the freshman, lofts it towards Almondoz, who makes her first save of the day. Almondoz from Trinidad and Tobago had spent a little under 460 minutes in net through the first 5 games. And making all of those starts, posted 2 clean sheets. She has 50 career starts to her name, does Almondoz. But coming off the bench today for a second half appearance, wiggling her way through trouble is Drew McCarthy, who had the lone goal in the first half and slides one on Almondoz there, who makes a sprawling save on that near post. Rebecca Holbrook scored during that first portion of the season through 5 games. A player who is just constantly smiling. I always have to love chatting with Rebecca Holbrook, the senior from Highland, Michigan, structural engineering major. Starts as a left side defender typically. We knew she'd be playing a lot of minutes this year. In the mix right on cue, trying to strip things away from Caitlin Bergsma. Nice combinations there on the near side of the field from the Trolls. It's lofted towards the far post, out of the reach of Skabetza, who ultimately tracks it down in the far corner. We'll see who this is off of. Be a throw-in for the Trolls, and they'll try to reset in the attacking third. Celia Hopkins, who had 18 goals a season ago, stripped promptly by Bologna. Back to the midfield. Mila Silas. Nice touch ahead to Hopkins. And on to Katie Drenth from Cave Creek, Arizona, who started 14 games a season ago. Lawrence Tech trying to get something brewing here. Lauren Waziak back in the game. Up ahead to Jessie Koji. Holbrook lofts it towards the far post. Streaking down is Deanna Hill. Her header. Lofts over top the crossbar. And again, untested, undaunted is Allie Krantz, the senior goalkeeper for the Trolls. Deanna Hill might be thinking about that attempt after the game. One of the more energetic counter-attacking opportunities so far for Lawrence Tech on the day. Lovely defensive effort that time from Alexis Barnes. Koji On to Wozniak. Lauren Wozniak, such a wonderful story watching her return this season after missing nearly a year with hip surgery prior to the beginning of this season. She scored a goal back on October 24th of 2020 through those first 5 games. It was her first goal since October 20th of 2018 before that hip injury she suffered. 735 days between those goals for Lauren Wozniak. And that hip injury was something that she really had to push through. Certainly would have loved to see her on the field last season, but she'll tell you that her faith is something she leaned on during that time period to really get through it. And now she's back past her fitness test prior to the season. Really had a couple of moments where she arguably could have scored in addition to that lone goal she netted. There's one that was called back due to an offside. But so good to see her back in action. Lauren Wozniak, the junior from Walled Lake, Michigan. All of these players will be granted an extra year of eligibility, which is so wonderful. Something that you really cherish is your years as a college athlete. Our sideline reporter today, Sarah Davis, could probably speak to that as a golfer at Lawrence Tech and a former volleyball player as well. And Trolls up 1-0. Again, the lone goal having been scored by Drew McCarthy, assisted by Celia Hopkins. Matheson plays it ahead to Dalia Jarosik, who was entangled there with Mia Silas, able to break things free. On to McCarthy. She lost it. Now Jarosik's back on it. Back and forth we go. The field has opened up a bit. It was very tight in the midfield. Not much room to work, not much room to turn over your shoulder and look for the next pass through those first 10 minutes or so. But clean and comfortable right now is Katie Drenth, who slides it ahead here to Brianna Ull. Now to Celia Hopkins, who is expected to have such a big year in the Chicagoland Collegiate Conference. Put it towards the edge of the area. Now that's the second goal of the afternoon for Trinity Christian, this time off the foot of Demi Scabezza, the freshman from Murrieta, California. And the Trolls have doubled their advantage. It's 2-0 in favor of Trinity Christian. So the Blue Devils now in a game that has been so difficult for them to break through and sustain some attacking third pressure on a consistent basis, find themselves down 2-0. And they knew this would be a tall task today against this Trinity Christian program under Josh Lenars that has been so consistent over the past few years. 3 consecutive 16-win seasons. A look at Andy Richards there. His group trying to stem the tide. Still plenty of time remaining for a team that has a lot of experience. 7 seniors on this Lawrence Tech roster. A group that had a near flawless first 5 games, going 4-0-1. But in danger right now in non-conference play. Look at the group. Again, as we talked about earlier, 8 freshmen, 3 sophomores, 4 juniors, and 7 seniors in the mix. 11 of LTU's 13 goals so far this season have come off the feet of underclassmen. Here is one right now, Jessie Koji, who had 4 in 2 games. You can see why there. She has just so determined when the ball is on her feet. Rebecca Holbrook was trailing the play. Jessie Koji played it off of, that time, Easton Armstrong, and Trinity Trolls will get possession back here. Approaching the final half hour now Well, Lawrence Tech next up will take on Mount Nazarene. And Andy Richards told us before this one that these two tough non-conference games were on the schedule to prepare us for Uno, a team that is a perennial powerhouse in the WAC year in and year out, as Almondo's covers up there. Hey, Sarah, can you scroll through the schedule for a sec?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Well, these 2 goals so far that Trinity Christian have scored are the most that Lawrence Tech has allowed all season. Again, they had the 1-1 tie with Cornerstone. After that, they followed it up with an explosive 6-0 victory over Rochester, and then beat Cornerstone 2-1 to wrap up those first 5 games of the season. So uncharted territory at the moment for LTU, trying to wiggle their way out of trouble. Deanna Hill, she's pretty good at wiggling her way out of trouble. Ran into a bit too much trouble there, though. Emily Williams in the game now on the LTU side, 12 in white, out of Byron, Michigan, trying to track that down, the applied mathematics major. Another player who is super fit, so it's an energy boost off the bench for you when you can bring in Williams. She works very hard in practice and in the games. Almondo's desperately hanging on for dear life on that occasion. Again, it was Renee Anderson who got the start today in goal. And now Almondo is making a second half appearance. Each have given up a goal. The message today on the Lawrence Tech side was play every game like it's your last, because at the end of the day, your days are numbered, in the words of Laura Silverman, who consistently carries herself with that kind of mentality. The assistant coach, Doug Steinard for Lawrence Tech, actually sent out a bit of a motivational video for his team this morning, as he often does on game days, and said, hey, it's been 104 days since you last played. You wondered how each player would handle that, as you see Doug kind of walking into the frame there. He did tell us today he wanted more airtime, and now he is getting more airtime as we see Doug. So we are, Doug, you can join our air anytime you want to. And Andy, who we spoke to before the game, Andy Richards, who's been the head coach in 2016-17, was also very excited for today. Noted that everyone's so excited to get back out onto the field. Everyone really talked about the energy in practice over the past week or so, getting back to contact. Everyone was tested prior to today's game, so we're nice and safe here at Wixom Sports Complex, which is about 20 minutes away from Lawrence Tech's campus. A little over half an hour to go right now in this matchup between the Trolls and the Blue Devils. These two teams don't often meet. Here's Celia Hopkins. She is a one-person wrecking crew. That time, Almondo's makes a lovely save. Those the type of plays that have already earned her a couple of WAC Defensive Player of the Weeks this season. 2 clean sheets, laying out there and playing with that this is your last game type of mentality. It will produce a corner kick. Third set piece of the day for the Trolls. Towards the near post, bunch of players scrunched up there, propelled out. Lindsay Schutbach will track things down. Slides it ahead kindly onto the right foot of Lauren Wozniak. Back to Schutbach with a nice 2-person combination. Wozniak running with her, played well out of her reach, and lofted out of play there by Kaylee Van Elst, the senior from Granville, Michigan, who has started now 43 of her past 47 games in a Trinity Christian uniform. NAIA All-American Honorable Mention honors last season. Former three-sport athlete in high school, Van Elst played volleyball, basketball, and soccer. Her parents, Erwin and Kesa, are both alums of Trinity Christian, so carrying on the family tradition. Scabetta fires, and Almondo's able to make another save, already her fourth in this second half. Drew McCarthy, who has scored one of the 2 goals so far for Trinity Christian. You see how dynamic of a player she is there. Just kind of casually drifting her way around oncoming defenders. It's a talented Trinity Christian team. Spoke to Laura Silverman earlier today, one of the defensive midfielders for LTU, and I asked her specifically about your approach to trying to defend Celia Hopkins, number 44 in the Navy uniform, who had 18 goals a season ago. When you have a player who has the capability of 18 goals, how do you approach that defensively specifically? And she said, well, while 18 goals certainly is unusual, she's a player you have to keep an eye on, obviously, but it's a team still. It's still a team sport. And it certainly is, as Hopkins has the ball right now, fittingly watched by Silverman. And multiple players so far have been threats on the Trinity Christian side. Neither of the goals have come from Hopkins. It's McCarthy and Scabetta so far who have been the 2 goal scorers for the Trinity Christian Trolls. Here's Mia Silas, sophomore from Rancho Cucamonga, California. Missed all of last season with an injury, but they are happy to have her back, and she started now in each of her first 3 games upon returning to Trinity Christian. Silverman played it back to Matheson. Dangerous feed. Matheson got there just in the nick of time. And now here's Dahlia Jarosik, the sophomore. Up ahead to her fellow sophomore and good friend Deanna Hill. And this will stick with LTU. Under half an hour to work with now for the Blue Devils. Wozniak was almost able to get her foot on that. Emily Williams trying to track it down, but couldn't quite get there in time. There's a look at Emily Williams, the freshman from Byron, Michigan. She's always playing with energy, and according to the team, the energy was amazing in practice this past week. They'll need to call on that same energy right now to discover an extra gear, because you wonder what the conditioning is like right now. They have been obviously conditioning with each other over these past several weeks in practice, but the game-like energy, the game feel, any athlete will tell you, is just a little different when you've had 104 days off. So how do you now make up for that 104 days off as time is dwindling on your comeback efforts?
Something that you mentioned, Jason, is the Trolls are very strong defensively. It's been very rare that the Blue Devils have even gotten the ball down here today. It's been a lot of action on the Blue Devil net. So we're hoping to switch that around, get some shots on their side.
That is true. You know, it's that back 4 for Trinity Christian has been so tough to break through when you do get down in their end. And then it's difficult to even get down in their end because oftentimes they're so tough to get by in the midfield. Very fundamentally sound overall from a defensive standpoint are the Trolls. And free kick lofted towards the near post of Rebecca Almondoz. She'll take the duties. No spectators really in attendance for today's game. If you do hear some noise in the background, it's an interesting atmosphere because we've got a baseball practice going on right behind us. If you're just joining us here at Wixom Sports Complex, the Lawrence Tech baseball team preparing to get their spring season underway. In addition to softball, who played indoors a week before last, I should say last week, everything getting back into the groove at Lawrence Tech. It'll be a busy spring season to say the least, and Lawrence Tech women's soccer will certainly be a part of that. A free kick here. Almondoz once again able to creep over and just has to take a look at that one as it soared over and past her net. Laura Silverman, senior, so vocal. She's played every minute today. Trying to loft it down the left-hand side. Schutbach was able to catch up to it. Player who's dealt with injuries over the past couple of seasons. She's back, and Andy Richards will be the first to tell you that this is the fittest Schutbach has ever been in a Blue Devil uniform. And that's been something that she's tried to correct over the past couple of seasons and appears to have that down now. The Blue Devils, one of their top priorities year in and year out is fitness in general. You actually can't step on the field without passing your fitness test to kick off the season, presuming they did another one of those prior to the restart. This brings up another free kick now for Trinity Christian. Brianna Ull will take the duties. The wall is up. Almondoz, that clipped off her hands. And steady once again on another dangerous free kick. That brings up a set piece, though. So right back in the defensive position they go. To the near post. Timely header from Silverman to punch it back out to the midfield in front of that Trinity Christian bench. Demi Scabezza, the second of 2 goal scorers so far today for Trinity Christian. We'll toss it back in. Brianna Ull had 9 goals this season to go, second on the Trinity Christian roster. A foot race for it now, won that time by Scabezza, who was racing over with Deanna Hill. And Drew McCarthy, beg your pardon, who was the other goal scorer today for his Trinity Christian team. Wozniak made an aggressive play in the midfield. But the Trolls, as we mentioned, they're just so tough to break through. They run that high press, and it works to perfection. Celia Hopkins, just a matter of time until she gets her first goal of the season. That simmers wide. Holbrook threads it up the left-hand side. And bouncing in front of our camera there, right about midfield. Into the hands of Easton Armstrong. Another versatile player, really can put her in the midfield or on your back line. Mentioned her younger sister, Maddie, is a sophomore on the Trinity Christian roster. Easton is one of the leaders and members of the women's ministry on the Trinity Christian campus, and She's actually been on team mission trips to Africa and Costa Rica. A lot of players on the Trinity Christian roster have gone on mission trips throughout their 4 years. Which makes it feel odd to call them trolls, but I'll stick with it. Here's one of the better trolls, Celia Hopkins. Emily Williams trying to find Wozniak out of the reach, and right there to settle things down. There's McCarthy. Lovely feed. Caitlin Bergsma. You really have to keep your head on a swivel against this team, don't you? And they are just so quick up and down the field and have controlled the midfield. One of LTU's goals today was to make sure that, in the words of Laura Silverman chatting with her earlier today when we talked about trying to stay in front of people, not giving them much time to turn over their shoulders, making sure that you're right on their hip as soon as they make that first touch. However, that's been a challenge today, and they've kind of had to back off and play a more safe defensive game. Into the final 20 minutes now. The second half. Time dwindling. Or Silverman will take a free kick from the midfield. Tried to thread it down the left-hand side there for Holbrook. Two players that are listed as defenders, but are more than comfortable joining the attack and getting involved offensively. As, speaking of players on defense, Anna Lewis will check in here for Lawrence Tech. Another defender, a freshman from Edinburgh, Scotland. She's an interesting story from the capital of Scotland in Edinburgh, as we mentioned. A very picturesque city. And one thing she had to get adjusted to was the temperatures in the early stages of the season, playing outside in what was once 90-degree weather, which feels like a long time ago now as we step out into what feels like 5 degrees every day here in Michigan. But in Scotland, it rarely gets over 70 degrees. So one thing she had to get accustomed to was training in that hot heat, the humidity. More often than not, it isn't humid in Scotland. It's raining all the time. So that was something she had to really adjust to, and has done that, and now is seeing more and more minutes and should see a lot of minutes throughout her career at LTU. Lewis, also one of the younger players on the roster. She just turned 18 last month. Again, this Trinity Christian team 1-1 on the season. Blue Devils at 4-0-1. To reset the stage, best Lawrence Tech start since 2018. Trinity Christian coming off a loss to Georgetown down in Kentucky. They bounced back well. This could potentially be, if they hang on here, already the third shutout game that they've been involved in. They've won one and lost one. Began the season with a 1-0 win over Thomas More. Then we're on the opposite end of that script with a 2-0 loss to Georgetown last time out. However, to kind of give them maybe some relief there or justification, that was a back-to-back, which is so unusual to play a back-to-back throughout after having not played for so long. They didn't play all of the fall, hadn't played since last season, and then got back in action last Friday. Good win to kick off the season. Then next day, you're right back at it. So just kind of getting accustomed to that. You wonder how much of their soccer legs were still under them that following day. They certainly have had a lot of energy today. Almondoz will watch that soar over top the crossbar. And they make it number 3. Kara Amidin, again the attacking midfielder from Denver, Colorado, finds her first collegiate goal. And Trinity Christian is in command and in control, up 3-0. LTU with some substitutes potentially warming up on the near side in front of us here. Trinity Christian making some changes as well, as Demi Scabetta makes her way back in. Armstrong, watched by Hill, slided over to Olivia Andre. Her dad, aunt, and uncle all played college soccer. Sister Sophia currently plays for Covenant College. Olivia comes from a soccer family, to say the least. Another player who just loves the game so much, majoring in physical education. She's actually a youth soccer coach during her spare time. A freshman from West Springfield, Massachusetts. Most of the recruiting for Trinity College is domestic, but it's all over the place. We've said Denver, Colorado today. We've said West Springfield, Massachusetts, California, Arizona, Michigan. They really like to stretch it out and search for talents around the nation. Their coaching staff has done such a nice job of that. Josh Lenars leading the way for the Trinity Christian team again this season as the head coach. Andy Richards for Lawrence Tech looking on, hoping for his team to make some improvements down this final 13 minutes. Andre, and something progressing there. Matheson did well to get back. She's played just about every minute today. You see a few substitutions on the near side. Jussie Koji, Andrea Williams, maybe getting set to return here down the final stretch. Maddie Bologna, wouldn't be surprised if she heads out here. She has played a lot of minutes today. A junior from Macomb, Michigan, and Dakota High School. Dakota High School has been a prominent recruiting spot really around Lawrence Tech athletics over the past several years. Again, Bologna now in that outside fullback spot. Meanwhile, she and the rest of that back line will have to get back as Brianna Ull is threatening. She still has plenty of energy. Stripped away that time by the freshman. Kayla Ellis, central defender for Lawrence Tech. Here comes McKenna White on the Lawrence Tech side. Freshman from Northville and Mercy High School. Super quick, ultra athletic, outside fullback. Looks like Silverman is getting stretched out there, if I'm not mistaken. Actually, that might be Holbrook, beg your pardon. Laura is up. We talked about Rebecca Holbrook earlier. She is one of the few naturally left-footed players on LTU's roster, and she typically resides on that left-hand side. Can get involved offensively, scored a goal earlier this season. Player who really loves the game and loves her teammates. Structural engineering major, and they're expecting her to be a leader down this final stretch here of the season, with still plenty of schedule remaining. Just a couple of non-conference games before conference play resumes when Uno comes to town. LTU will take on Mount Nazarene next before that matchup with Northwestern Ohio, and that should, both of those games really should be tough matchups, just like today. So there's no easing back into the schedule if you're LTU right now. Good to see Rebecca pop up. Andrea Williams into the game now on the LTU side. We'll play it back to Kayla Ellis, a couple of underclassmen connecting. Jurosic on to Koji, two more underclassmen. That's intercepted, though, by Demi Scabetta, sparkling freshman who has scored today for Trinity Christian. Threads it down the left-hand side in search of Cara Amidin, who scored her first collegiate goal today, the most recent one on the board. McKenna White desperately trying to clear, couldn't do so initially. Trolls aren't quite done yet. Easton Armstrong over to Claire Darby. Was in search that time of Katie Drenth, but it ended up fortuitously onto the foot of Cara Amidin. Tic-tac-toe they go, finally intercepted, and that possession is broken up. Dalia Jurosic trying to dance her way past Easton Armstrong. Plays it to the midfield, clipped off a foot. Andrea Williams settles things down. Up ahead now through the middle of the field, and it'll roll kindly onto the foot of Allie Krantz. Cleared back to the midfield by Drenth. Ellis has to look over her shoulders, being stalked by Denny Scabetta. Almondo's dangerously clears back to the midfield. It's the kind of pressure, though, that we've seen all afternoon from this Trinity Christian team. They don't let up, they don't lose energy, and they are very clean. They don't make very many mistakes. Meaden playing with plenty of confidence right now, turns over her shoulder. Pass across the field, intercepted by Koji, up to head to Jurosic. Finds her partner in crime, Deanna Hill, who just hasn't been able to spend too much time on the ball today. I mean, right there, as soon as you make that first touch, right on her hip is Kaylee Van Elst, who was an NAIA All-American honorable mention last season for a reason. On that back four for the Trolls, Koji deflected promptly by Claire Darby. sophomore and a transfer from Union University. In her third game as a Troll, Deanna Hill looking for her second goal of the season. That is engulfed by Krantz, who has been so steady today, the senior from Portage, Michigan. Under 10 minutes to go now in this second half of play. Certainly a performance to be proud of if you're a Trinity Christian fan. And Blue Devils aren't being too cautious now defensively, pressing up a bit more. Worked out that time. Again, this was a challenge today for Lawrence Tech on multiple fronts. They entered today shorthanded with no Jenny Deere in the lineup. Their leading goal scorer through those first 5 games, she had 5 goals. So that was an inherent challenge. You lose how dynamic of a player she is, how much attention she draws when she isn't in the mix. So hopefully LT will get Deere back in soon. Koji, her fellow freshman, lofts it over top the net there. Koji has 4 goals of her own. Has had some good moments today, Jussie Koji. They're hoping that she can continue to build off what was an excellent final 2 weeks in particular of those first 5 games in the fall. Here is Koji, right on cue. Nice feed from Koji this time to Shootbach. The Hill, a little bit of time to check over her shoulder. And Dalia Jurosic galloping down the left-hand side, right in front of us. Put it towards the near post where Hill was streaking towards, but the two couldn't quite connect. This is the most goals Lawrence Tech has allowed so far this season, and they're yet to be shut out so far. LTU has had a couple of 1-0 wins, but haven't been shut out yet this season. Last year, they scored 40 goals as a team, which nearly doubled the amount that Lawrence Tech netted in 2018. Then we're hit with an unexpected piece of adversity in the early stages, as we talked about earlier, with Caitlin Mather, the leading goal scorer from last season, and a senior forward going down for the year with a torn ACL. That was something you obviously don't put in the handbook. You're not expecting to adjust your plan when your leading goal scorer goes down, but they did, and did so very well. Now finding really their first kind of hurdle to jump over from a goal scoring standpoint so far this season, having not really applied any consistent pressure in the attacking third so far today. But credit Trinity Christian for the job they've done. Have some good experienced players that have played well today on the Trolls side of things. This is one of them in Celia Hopkins, who has an assist. Whoa, that almost went in, and then a follow-up attempt went awry. I don't know how she almost scored there, but I think she hit the crossbar from a mile away. That's what Celia Hopkins does, though. She scores goals in ways that you don't expect. Had 18 a season ago, and nearly found her first of the season there in unexpected fashion. Almost wouldn't have blamed Almondo's had that gone in. Under 5 to go, the Blue Devils trying to, number 1, hope this lead doesn't get any larger. Number 2, maybe find the back of the net here and breathe some momentum into the next matchup against Mount Nazarene. This is what you probably wanted more of in this second half. Less time and space for Trinity Christian to work with in the midfield. You can see it's kind of a back and forth battle right now in that midfield area. But a little too much of that. Clean passes and lanes to run through. You can see the Trolls play with that high press, and they don't give you much time to look for the next option. Under 4 to go now in this second half. McKenna White slips it ahead. Shoot back, nice one-touch feed to Jurosic. Right place, right time, though, for Demi Skabetza, who just does it all. Has scored a goal today, has been excellent defensively. Off to a brilliant start in her freshman season. Doesn't look like a freshman. I had to check my notes there to make sure she is a freshman. I looked twice, and wow, it's a talented Trinity Christian team, to say the least. Hoping for a 4th consecutive 16-win season. The young players have been very good today. Skabetza, a freshman, a Meaden threatening there. Freshman from Denver, Colorado, who scored her first collegiate goal today. Into the final 2 minutes now, Trinity Christian will get back above 500 today. They'll hit the 2-1 mark on the season. LTU will suffer their first regulation loss of the year. They'll head to 4-1-1. Still certainly a start to be proud of on the Lawrence Tech side. Hopkins, just a matter of time until she finds the back of the net. The 18-goal scorer from a year ago. There's Deanna Hill tracking after it. Plenty of speed, which is pretty fun to witness firsthand down on field level here. Had 9 goals as a freshman, was a 2-sport athlete in high school, played basketball and soccer. People they know about her now. The book is out on Hill about how elusive and strong she is on the ball. So she's going to see a lot more heavy marking this season. But a very calm, good soccer player in general, which should help her out as she continues to grow. Could say the same thing about Jessie Koji. More and more marking will be on her throughout the course of especially the conference season, after people took notice of her winning that WAC Offensive Player of the Week award in the late stages of the first portion of this season, which was 5 games for most teams in the WAC conference. Dwindling seconds now. Don't go anywhere. We'll have an interview coming up with an LTU player. Sarah Davis on the sidelines today, so we'll have that momentarily, but this one will wind down, and Trinity Christian claims a shutout victory. Their second through 3 games so far this year. They won 1-0 to kick off the season, lost 2-0 last Saturday against Georgetown, but bounced back with a 3-0 convincing victory over Lawrence Tech. We will have a player coming up pretty soon here on LTSN. Yeah, I'd go now before they. Trinity Christian again with a 3-0 victory today. Scabetta scored, the freshman, as we have a player potentially coming over soon here. Drew McCarthy also a goal scored today, in addition to Cara Amidin. As you take a look at some of the highlights there, Renee Anderson played the first half in goal for Lawrence Tech. Rebecca Almendoz played the final 45. Welcome back to LTSN. Wrapping up this one. Trinity Christian with a 3-0 victory today over the Blue Devils here at Wixom Sports Complex. I should say Total Sports Complex in Wixom, Michigan. It was a pleasure to bring this one to you. Looking ahead to the schedule now. After this matchup, it'll be Mount Nazarene on Friday of next week for this LTU team that's getting the legs back under them. And then the following week, WAC play is back underway, taking on UNOH, one of the perennial powerhouses in the conference year in and year out. And then, gosh, you just don't have much time to settle back in. This schedule is so tough for LTU. Their head coach, Andy Richards, told us before the game that one of our goals this season is to start knocking off some of those bigger names, the Madonnas, the Aquinas, the Unos. Well, that's literally the schedule after this non-conference stretch wraps up. They'll have Uno and then Madonna and Aquinas. Madonna will be at home, but the other two on the road. So this Blue Devil team will be tested, to say the least, getting this second portion of the season back underway, but certainly something that they won't shy away from and haven't shied away from so far in the early stages of this season, dropping to 4-1-1 on the season. Trinity Christian up to 2-1 on the year now, as we noted. Again, such an awesome pleasure to just be back in action here at the Total Sports Complex. Everyone was so grateful to have the team back, and that was a wonderful sight to see, getting things underway once again. And Trinity Christian, a team with so much potential this year. Again, talented up front, talented on the back line, a very experienced roster. Trinity Christian, as we noted, 19-3 in 2017, 21-2 in 2018, 16-3-1 last season. So it was a tough test, and Lawrence Tech will try to bounce back from that. Now we go to the sidelines with Sarah Davis and Laura Silverman on how they'll try to do that.
All right, 2 weeks from today, you guys are going to play Uno. What's the mindset entering into this week?
Well, you know, going into this week, we got to learn from the mistakes that we made today. We need to keep possession a little more, which is something we're working on in practices. So going into Uno, we're ready to play, we're ready to win, make history on that. We're just looking to play hard, work hard.
And what do you guys as a team hope to accomplish for the remainder of the season?
You know, we're looking to play in the top seed there. We haven't lost a game yet in the league, so that's really awesome, and we're looking to keep it that way.
All right. Well, great job tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
Back to you, Jason.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Laura. So that'll wrap up our show for today. Again, Trinity Christian with the 3-0 win over Lawrence Tech. It was a pleasure to bring this one to you here on LTSN. For our wonderful crew, excellent production crew on hand today, Sarah Davis on the sidelines. Have a wonderful afternoon. I'm Jason Ross Jr. We'll see you back on LTSN next week.